The number on the screen was 11,400. Not dollars. Positions. 11,400 people ahead of one person in a digital line that exists nowhere you can stand. Watch the phone in their hand. The screen refreshes every few seconds, the way a stock ticker twitches, and with each refresh, the number drops. 11,400, then 11,388, then 11,350. And you understand, watching it, that those aren't people giving up. Those are people getting in. The slots open and vanish in the same breath. The way concert tickets used to evaporate before you'd finish typing your card number. Except this isn't a concert. There's no band. There's no Friday night you're buying your way into. There's a clinic, Fountain Life, the longevity outfit co-founded by Tony Robbins and Peter Diamandis. And the thing it sells is more time alive, full body MRIs, early cancer blood panels, an annual workup pitched as catching the thing that kills you before it knows your name. The membership, once you reach the front, runs $19,500 a year. And the strangest part is that the people thumbing that screen are not sick. They walk, they sleep, they climbed the stairs this morning without a thought, coffee going cold on the counter. By every measure your own doctor would recognize, they are well. So sit closer to the actual question, because it's a stranger one than the price tag suggests. Why would a healthy person pay to wait in line, to pay again for something they cannot name? And underneath that, the question that's really doing the work, the one that has them refreshing at a stoplight, in a waiting room, in bed with the lights off. What do they believe they will lose if the line closes before they reach the front? That's not greed. This is closer to a man checking the locks twice in the dark, listening for the click. It's the fear of being on the wrong side of a door that's quietly closing. The suspicion that somewhere a future is being handed out and your name isn't on the list yet. I want to follow that feeling all the way down, honestly, without flinching from what's real about it. Because something is real about it. The door is closing on something, but not on what they think. And here's the turn I'll hold to before this is over. What's standing at the front of that 11,000 person line, the thing they're paying $19,000 in a year of waiting to reach, may already be inside the body holding the phone. Free, issued at birth. Let me show you where. It starts as a tightening just under the sternum, a half-inch drop in the stomach, the kind of cold that has no temperature. It isn't the fear of dying. People our age have made a kind of peace with mortality. Not happy, but honest. We've buried parents. We've sat in waiting rooms under fluorescent lights that hum, smelling the antiseptic and the cold coffee from the vending machine down the hall. We know how the story ends, and that knowledge has stopped being a stranger. No, this is different. This is what arrives when you scroll past one of those headlines. A man in his 30s spending more on his blood work in a month than you made in your first year of full-time work. Not grief, not envy exactly. It's the sensation of looking up from your own life and realizing a race has been running for years, and nobody told you it had started, and you're somewhere near the back, breathing hard, wondering when the gun went off. That's the ache I want to name precisely tonight. Because the easy words for it, anxiety, insecurity, they're too soft. They don't carry the edge it actually has. The accurate word is behind. Not old, behind. There's a difference, and your body knows it even when your mouth can't find it. Old is a fact. Behind is a verdict. Old is gravity, slow, fair applied to everyone. Behind is competition, a line drawn somewhere out in the dark, and you on the wrong side of it, and people you've never met already across. Listen to how these reports are built, and you'll hear the trick. They never say you are failing. They don't have to. They show you a screen full of numbers. VO2 max, glucose variability, inflammatory markers, a biological age, allegedly 8 years younger than the date on the driver's license. And they let the arithmetic do the cruelty for them. Somebody out there is optimizing. And the unspoken second half of that sentence, the part you feel as a swallowed stone, is, and you're not. You feel slow. You feel, and I want to use the exact word because it's the one that actually stings, outdated. Like a tool that still runs fine, but isn't the current model anymore. I notice this most in small moments. You take the stairs at the office, the rubber treads worn shiny in the middle, the handrail cool and faintly sticky under your palm. And at the top there's that pause, that breath you have to find, your shirt collar damp at the back of the neck. A younger man strolls up behind you. Not even warm, his sneakers silent, talking on his phone. Nothing happened. No one mocked you. But a line got drawn right there in the stairwell, invisible, and you ended up on the slow side of it. Or you read that some founder pays people to manage his sleep architecture, his light exposure, his meal timing down to the minute, and you think about your own night. The 2 hours staring at a ceiling you can map by streetlight, the radiator ticking, the alarm that comes too soon, the coffee that's really just a tool now to drag the body across a threshold it doesn't want to cross. And the gap between his life and yours doesn't feel like money anymore. It feels like capacity, like he's playing a game you weren't issued the manual for. Here's what I won't do. I won't tell you that feeling is foolish. It isn't. The world has genuinely started sorting people into tiers and then broadcasting the sorting as entertainment. And the discomfort you feel is you noticing that accurately. Something real is being implied about your value, and you're picking it up. That's not weakness. Your antennae are doing exactly what they're built to do. So I'm going to give that ache the dignity of being looked at directly with the lights on, instead of pretending it's smaller than it is. But I want you to notice something while we sit here in it. Notice that the feeling didn't come from your knees, or your blood work, or your actual body in this actual room. This chair, this lamp, the sound of your own breathing. It came through a screen. It was handed to you. The verdict of behind didn't rise up out of you. It was placed into you frame by frame, by people who profit when you believe the race is real and you're losing it. And that's the seam I want to find. Because if the feeling was put there from the outside, through a channel, then the channel itself is the thing worth understanding, not just the news writing on it. So before you let that verdict settle into your shoulders tonight, stay with me. Next, I'm going to show you exactly where the wiring runs and how to cut it. You know the feeling. The headline lands in the morning and your chest tightens before your brain even catches up. Asterisk, they've cracked it. Reverse aging. The wealthy are already doing it. Asterisk, and underneath the dread there's a worse thing. A small, tired ache that says everyone is moving faster than you, buying a future you can't afford. So let me sit you down inside the actual story, because the headline that came across my desk this week, another clinic profile, another billionaire's longevity routine splashed across the feed, tosses these words around like everyone knows what they mean, and almost nobody does. It opens with NAD plus infusions, a clear bag, a slow drip, 90 minutes in a recliner, while something cold moves up the vein in your arm and your jaw tightens for reasons nobody quite explains. $800, sometimes more, and the promise writing underneath, it is cellular energy, mitochondrial repair, the engine of your cells running clean again. What the article doesn't say, in its confident prose, is that the human trials are thin, that much of what's known comes from cells in a dish and animals far smaller than you. The drip is real. The proof is still mostly a hypothesis. The same piece celebrates genetic mapping. A swab of the cheek, a tube of blood, and weeks later a report that tells you your predispositions, your methylation patterns, your so-called biological age. Calculated from markers most working scientists will tell you privately are still being argued over. You read that number and something happens in your stomach. It says you're older than your birthday or younger. Either way, it's lodged in you now, and you didn't carry it this morning. I had a friend who went through exactly this. Smart woman, anxious by wiring. She got the number back, and it broke something open in her. She started reorganizing her whole life around a measurement that may not even be measuring what they claim. So one night, I told her about vibration. Not the mystical kind. The simple, observable truth that the state you hold inside you radiates outward and pulls matching experiences toward it. Walk into that clinic afraid, vibrating at fear, and you will buy fear every upsell, every panel of red light they bathe you in, every infrared bed they have you lying like a man being gently cooked. That's the trick of the place. The marble and the soft lighting are engineered to lower you into a frequency of lack, because lack is what opens the wallet. And near the bottom of the article, where the numbers get serious, the off-label drugs. Diabetes medications prescribed for longevity. Transplant compounds repurposed for the dream of slowing the clock. Hormones, peptides ordered from somewhere you can't pronounce. These aren't fringe operations. They're clinics with valet parking selling you molecules in a context no large study has ever approved. Here's what I want you to feel sitting where you're sitting. Not outrage. Outrage burns off fast and leaves you nowhere. What this actually is, when you understand it, is steadier than that. It's the moment you realize the thing dressed as certainty is mostly a wager, and that the moment you see the wager clearly, you stop being its mark. This is where the law of attraction stops being a poster and becomes armor. Because what you give your attention to expands. Pour your focus into the fear that you're decaying, that you're behind, that the rich have bought the cure, and you summon more of exactly that. The biohacker's rail edge isn't the $800 drip. It's the discipline of attention. You decide deliberately what frequency you walk and carry. My friend learned to do this. She'd take the half second before the claim landed and ask, quietly, from a place of strength rather than panic, is this proven, or is this just well lit? And the asking itself changed her vibration. She stopped buying. You're doing it right now. Listening to me lay this out instead of flinching at the headline. That pause is the muscle. And the more you train out a clinic menu, the more it works on everything else that arrives prepackaged and certain. So here is your real takeaway, the thing that should leave you stronger than when this started. The selling always outruns the proving. Always. In medicine, in markets, in the news at your door every morning. But you're not the frequency they're trying to sell you. You set your own. And a person who controls their attention, who refuses to vibrate at fear on command, is a person nobody can move. That's not a smaller life. That's the most powerful one there is. Maybe you felt it this morning. That tightness behind the sternum when you open the account statement, or read the headline, or just lay there at 5 a.m. doing the math on years you can't quite count anymore. I want to name it plainly because the story I'm about to tell you is really a story about that feeling and about the $21,000 one man spent trying to make it stop. Here's what crossed my desk this week. A longevity clinic, one of the gleaming new ones selling peptides, infusions, and 40-page genetic reports, quietly reported that its fastest growing client base is now men over 50. Not the biohacking crowd, not the eccentrics chasing 200 years. Ordinary, successful men, partners at law firms, regional business owners, men who, if you asked them why they wrote the check, would give you a clean answer about their daughter's wedding, about staying sharp, about return on investment. And every word would be true, and none of it would be the real reason. Because here's what those clinics figured out long before the scientists started writing their cautious letters. They're not in the health business. The thing in the vial, that's the product on the invoice. But the thing the client's hand wanted when it's signed doesn't have a chemical name. He bought certainty. He bought the feeling of having done something definite against a fear with no shape. I know that look. It's the same when a man gets checking the locks twice at night. Not because he heard anything, but because checking is the only motion available against a dread that won't hold still. These last few years have taught our generation one lesson hard. The rules you plan around are not stable. Pensions shifted. The market that was supposed to be a ladder turned into an elevator with the cables restrung while you stood in it. A friend your age, fit, careful, a marathon runner, got a diagnosis nobody saw coming. The message keeps arriving, and signed. Control was always something you were only renting. So when a clinic hands a man a chart, biological age, trajectory, projected health span, they're not selling years. They're selling the chart, the line that goes up, the dashboard, the sense that the formless thing has finally been measured and made to hold still. I understand the pull. There's an ancient relief in pointing at a graph and saying, here, this is what I'm doing about it. The graph doesn't even have to be accurate. It only has to be specific. The appointment could change nothing measurable in his blood, and he'd still walk out lighter. Because for one afternoon, in a cold room that smelled of alcohol swabs and new carpet, with the soft hiss of an four-line and a man in a pressed white coat speaking in calm numbers, the unnameable dread got treated as a solvable problem and given a price. That's what's for sale. Not biology. Predictability. The most expensive luxury good in America right now is the feeling that tomorrow is something you can buy in advance. And here's the quiet thing I want you to carry out of this. He didn't need the molecule to feel better. He needed the certainty. The molecule was just the delivery vehicle. The most expensive, the most invasive, the least proven one anyone ever invented for a feeling. Which raises a question the clinic will never ask him, because their whole business depends on him never asking it himself. If what he bought was the feeling of standing on ground that holds, then the $21,000 wasn't paying for health. It was paying to outsource a state of mind. He rented, at a brutal markup, the composure he couldn't generate on his own. Notice what that means. The certainty has to be repurchased every year. It expires. It doesn't accumulate in him. It accumulates in them. He's not building anything that stays. He's renting the floor he stands on. The rent goes up, And the day he stops paying, the dread is right there waiting, exactly as shapeless as before. Because you cannot teach a man steadiness by selling it to him by the dose. The steadiness was never in the vial. It lives somewhere cheaper and closer than he was ever told. In how attention gets aimed, in what the nervous system gets trained to expect, in the small daily practices that change what a body feels safe believing about tomorrow. That's the ground we're walking toward. But first you had to see clearly what he was reaching for. Because you've been reaching for the same thing in cheaper ways your whole life. That tightness you're carrying in your chest right now. The low hum of dread that maybe you've fallen behind. Maybe you're doing it wrong. Maybe everyone else has figured out something you missed. I want to name it before we go any further. It's real, and it's been put there. There's a kind of silence that happens at a conference podium right before a respected man tells a room full of people something they don't want to hear. The shuffling stops. The water glasses go still. And the speaker, gray at the temples, decades of lab work behind his eyes, leans toward the microphone and says, in effect, "We don't actually know that this works. Some of what's being sold may quietly do harm." That moment happened more than once this past year. Researchers who've spent their lives studying how bodies age stepped out of their journals and their grant cycles and said it plainly in public to reporters. The protocols people are paying $20,000 a year for, the cocktails, the infusions, the stacks, rest on evidence so thin you could read a newspaper through it. And something in you loosens when you hear that. Not relief exactly. More like what happens when an honest person finally says the thing you suspected but couldn't prove. You weren't crazy. You weren't behind. Someone who actually knew the numbers had been standing quietly in the room the whole time. And one of them finally spoke up. Let me tell you what these scientists actually mean, because it matters, and because the distance they're pointing at is enormous. When a study comes out of a lab, a mouse lives longer, a cell stops dividing, a marker shifts in a petri dish. That is a beginning, a flicker, a reason to look closer. It is not a finished sentence. It is the first word of a paragraph that takes 20 years to write, if it ever gets written at all. A result in a mouse and a benefit you can feel in your own body decades from now are not the same kind of thing. And the people selling the first while charging for the second are counting on you not to notice the gap. The longitudinal studies, the slow, unglamorous ones that follow thousands of real people across 30, 40 years of ordinary living, keep returning the same humbling verdict. Most of what reliably extends a healthy life is boring. Movement, sleep that actually restores, connection that doesn't drain you. The body, watched over decades, does not reward the spectacular. It rewards the consistent. But consistency doesn't make a headline, and it certainly doesn't justify a membership fee. So the clever interventions get rushed to market on the strength of a single bright result, and the human being becomes the experiment. Off-label compounds, combinations no one has studied together. The researchers' real fear isn't that these things don't work. It's worse than that. It's that we won't know what they did to people for 10, 15 years. And by then the damage, if there is damage, will be quiet, diffuse, impossible to trace back to its source. A liver that tires early. An immune system subtly off its rhythm. Nothing you could point to. Nothing that ever made the brochure. Sit with that for a moment. It's a heavy thing to hold, that the experiment is people and the bill comes due slowly. And then notice something else underneath the weight of it. A scientist told the truth, and you didn't brace against it the way you brace against an ad. The words $20,000 and may do harm should set off every alarm you've got. But the dread didn't spike. That's worth paying attention to, because it points at something the brochures will never tell you. It isn't just the information that acts on your body. It's the hand behind the information. The people selling longevity understand this perfectly. They manufacture the alarm, then sell you the cure for it. What they never mention is that the signal passes through you on its way to your wallet, and you can read it before it gets there. You can ask, every time something reaches you, is this arriving to inform me or to mind me? That question is the discipline, not finding a better protocol. Learning to feel the difference between news that hands you something and news that takes something, and choosing on purpose to stand where you stay whole. We're going to keep practicing that because it changes everything that comes after it. There's a moment that happens in a clinic hallway that nobody warns you about, maybe waiting. The lighting is the kind that erases shadows, and somewhere down the hall a machine is reading your body like a ledger, deciding what you are. And here's the strange part. You came in feeling fine. You leave waiting to be told whether that was true. That's the trade nobody itemizes on the invoice. For your money, you don't just get tests. You get a new relationship with your own body, one where it's guilty until the numbers say otherwise. This is what biohacking has quietly become for a lot of people. Not cold plunges and breath work, measurement, continuous, recurring, escalating measurement, quarterly panels, glucose monitors stitched to your arm, a score for your inflammation, a score for your sleep, a score for how old your cells supposedly are, a dashboard you can open on your phone in line at the pharmacy, watching a little graph tell you whether today you're winning or losing, and the unspoken promise underneath all of it, the one that does the selling, is this: that measuring something is the same as improving it. That if you just watch closely enough, the watching itself becomes the medicine. It doesn't. And I want to show you why, because this is the part the brochure can't afford to print. When you are monitored constantly, when some part of your mind is always bracing for the next reading, your body does not interpret that as care. It interprets it as threat. A 2021 review in the journal Health Communication found that a meaningful share of fitness tracker users reported higher anxiety and a creeping fixation on the very numbers meant to set them free. The researchers called it, dryly, the burden of self-tracking. Think about what that means. The instrument installed to protect your health is generating the exact internal state that erodes it. You're paying to be made vigilant about a thing that heals best when you stop standing guard over it. I knew a man, sharp, disciplined, the kind who reads the manual before touching the machine, who got himself a glucose monitor. Within 3 weeks, he was eating lunch with his eyes on his phone instead of his food. A small spike after an apple could ruin his afternoon. He wasn't sick. His numbers were, by any honest reading, good. But he had traded the simple confidence of a body that just works for the anxious arithmetic of a man auditing himself. The thing nobody warns you about this week isn't the headline itself. It's the morning after you read it. You saw the story too, didn't you? The longevity clinic in Texas, the one profiled this week after it crossed 11,000 active members, each paying a monthly fee to be measured, scored, and optimized. The reporter sat with one of them, 61, a retired structural engineer, a man who built things that hold weight for a living. He said something that stayed with me. For the last 4 years, every single morning began the same way. A finger prick of blood onto a strip, a number on a screen, and a feeling he couldn't name until that morning. He looked at the glucose reading. It was fine, perfectly fine, and he felt nothing but the dread of having to do it again tomorrow. That's the part the membership price never shows you. There's a fatigue that has nothing to do with your body's age. A fatigue that comes from never being allowed to arrive. And when you read a story like that, I think a small dread opens up. Because you recognize it. You know what it means to be never, not for one waking hour, simply where you are. You're reading a label in the grocery aisle, cold air pouring out of the open freezer onto your wrists, calculating. You're at your granddaughter's birthday, and the cake is on the table, frosting catching the light. And somewhere underneath the joy, a small ledger opens and starts running the math on sugar. You lie down at night, and instead of rest, there's a ring on your finger measuring whether you're resting correctly. The watch buzzes. You missed your recovery score. Here's what I want to say plainly, because it took me too long to understand it myself. Aging, real aging, the slow, honest kind, is not the thing wearing you down. Aging is gentle. It asks very little of you. It lets you sit on a porch in July and feel the warm boards under your bare feet and the day passing without judgment. What wears you down is the second job, the unpaid, unending labor of self-improvement, the comparison that runs while you sleep. You scroll past a man your age on a screen, shirtless, glowing, talking about his biological markers, and something tightens in your jaw. Not envy exactly, something heavier. The sense that the bar moved again while you weren't looking. That comparison has a weight you can measure, not in dollars. In hours of your one life spent feeling insufficient. And the clinic in that story understood this before you did. That's the genius of it and the cruelty. They didn't sell that engineer a result. They sold him a subscription to his own dissatisfaction. The day you feel finished is the day they lose you. So you never feel finished. And I think you can feel it, can't you? The exhaustion of the man who is always shopping for himself. Always adjusting the dose, the diet, the device, the discipline. Buying the powder, then the better powder. Reading the reviews. Tracking the data. And underneath all of it, that quiet, flat voice that says, still not enough. Still not enough. No matter what the numbers say. The numbers could be perfect, and the voice keeps speaking. This is the heaviest part, so I won't rush past it. There are people right now who are healthier than they have ever been in their lives, and more miserable than they have ever been, and they cannot understand why. They did everything. They followed every protocol, and the joy didn't come because joy was never on the supplement list. You can optimize a body all the way to its grave and never once live inside it. That engineer in the story, the one with the blood strips, he told the reporter the strangest day of his life was the day he forgot to do it. Just forgot. Got busy, took his grandson fishing, felt the line tug, laughed at something the boy said, the smell of the lake water and the cut bait on his hands. He The headline crossed 3 days ago, and you probably felt it land somewhere behind your sternum. That tightening, that quiet math your body runs without asking permission. A tech founder, 56 years old, announced he now spends $21,000 a year reversing his biological age. Plasma swaps with his teenage son's blood. A hyperbaric chamber in the bedroom. A ring on his finger logging every heartbeat through the night. The number got repeated everywhere because the number is the point. This is what staying alive longer costs now, and you're not paying it. Sit with that tightening for a second. Don't argue with it yet. Just feel where it sits. Because there's a study that answers the headline, and almost no one has read it. It asked the people who outlived the actuarial tables. Not just survived, but stayed sharp, stayed walking, stayed laughing past dessert, what they shared. The researchers expected genetics. They expected diet. They expected something purchasable. That's not what they found. What predicted the longest, clearest lives wasn't anything you could put on a receipt. It was the number of people who'd notice an empty chair if you didn't show. It was whether your days had a pulse or had melted into one long gray obligation. It was whether your bare feet found cold grass in the morning, whether your eyes ever reached past the next wall, whether your lungs pulled air that smelled like rain instead of filtered nothing. And it was sleep. Not the kind the ring measures, but the heavy, unguarded drop a body takes only when it stops feeling hunted. Bonds, tempo, earth and sky, rest. Notice there's no line for income. No tier, no annual fee. Not one of those forces checks your balance before it goes to work in your cells. And here the headline turns inside out. The founder writing those checks isn't buying the things that actually move the years. He can't. They were never on the menu. You could buy a plasma swap. You cannot buy a friend who's known your voice for 40 years. You can't buy the chamber that hisses oxygen into your blood at 2 atmospheres. You cannot buy the loose, boneless ease of a Sunday with nowhere to be. The ring on his finger draws beautiful graphs of exactly how badly he slept while his mind chewed on the next quarter. It measures the absence. It cannot hand him the thing. So what is he actually purchasing up there at the top of the ladder? The effects that move the needle least. The margins, the decimal points. Maximum money for the periphery, while the center sits unpriced and ignored. The food going cold beside the phone. The chair across the table empty most nights. But here's where biohacking stops being a punchline and becomes a tool you can actually pick up. You know what gets me? $21,000 a year. That's the number a clinic outside Zurich put on its longevity protocol last quarter. The blood panels, the off-label prescriptions, the monthly infusions priced like a luxury car lease. And the men signing up aren't buying years. They're buying a way to stop checking the clock. Except they keep checking it harder because now they've got a payment plan riding on the outcome. That's what the whole industry sells. Not health, relief from the count, a year you don't have yet, a version of yourself living somewhere out ahead, in a future that slides back every time you reach for it. And you've been chasing him, the younger one, the one who started sooner, the one who supposedly got it right. I want to stop and look at one of those clinics for a second because the pitch is always the same. They show you a graph, a line that should go down, your decline, bent flat, or even tilted back up. They charge for the bending. But here's what the graph leaves out and what no protocol on that price sheet can touch. The body you're trying to protect is the one breathing right now. Not the optimized one, not the restored one. This one, the chest rising as I talk, the slight weight of your own hands, the temperature of the room on the back of your neck. There's no other body waiting off stage. There never was. And there's something the clinics gloss over because it doesn't cost anything and they can't bill for it. Researchers studying free divers, people who hold their breath at depth for minutes, whose lives depend on not panicking in the dark water, mapped a reflex these divers learn to trigger on command. A long, slow exhale, longer than the inhale, does something almost mechanical. It tells the heart to stretch the gap between beats. Not a belief, a signal traveling a nerve as old as the species, from breath to heart. The divers didn't manifest calm. They breathed it into being, one exhale at a time, because the alternative was drowning. You're in that dark water too. Have been for a while. The news churns at the surface, and the pull is to thrash toward it. Every headline a fresh reason to kick harder. But the thrashing is what drowns men. The divers know that. It's the first thing they unlearn. So here's the thing the brochure's priced at 21 grand never mention. That settled body, the steady chest, the mind that takes a headline without going under. They sold it to you as something behind a waiting list, payable in installments. And it turns out you came with the equipment. You've carried it your whole life without reading the manual. I notice it in myself when I'm reporting a story like this. The breath rides high in the chest, quick, shallow, ready to react, ready to keep up. That's the breath of a man watching the clock. It's the breath I bring to every comparison, every quiet tally of how many good years might be left. And when I catch it and let the exhale run long, past the point where the lungs feel empty, there's always a little more down there, and it's that little more that does the work. The low hurry that's been riding me all week loosens its grip. Not gone, just no longer running the show. The clinic outside Zurich can't put that on the price sheet. Neither can the one in Los Angeles charging double for the same panels with better lighting in the lobby. The numbers came out this week, and they were obscene. Clinics charging more than most people earn in a season for the promise of transformation by needle, by chamber, by panel of blood markers. One package ran into 6 figures. A curated regimen of infusions and proprietary scans sold as the frontier of human optimization. And I read through the breakdown, line by line, and what struck me wasn't the greed. It was the omission. The single most powerful lever over your internal chemistry wasn't on the list. It couldn't be. It has no shelf. Let me tell you what they left out. There's a sound you already know, even if you've never named it. That monitor beeping in a hospital corridor, steady and mechanical, the only honest thing in the building. That beep is a heart translated. And here's what almost nobody tells you about it. It isn't supposed to be perfectly even. A healthy heart doesn't tick like a clock. It speeds and slows, breath by breath, in variations measured in milliseconds. The counterintuitive truth, the one that took medicine decades to accept, the more your heart varies, the healthier you tend to be. A rigid, metronome heartbeat is the sick one, the dangerous one, the body bracing so hard it forgot how to breathe. Hold that, because it explains something you've felt and never had words for. After a hard week, the bills stacking, the headlines stacking, a call you didn't want, your chest gets tight in a way that has nothing to do with your arteries. Your breath goes shallow, high up near the collarbone instead of low in the belly. You feel wound, and beneath it, your heart's rhythm has flattened, locked into that rigid tick. The variation drained out of it. It gets stranger. The heart and the brain are in constant conversation, and most of the talking goes upward, heart to head, not the other way around. When the rhythm is chaotic and clenched, it sends a kind of static up the line, and your thinking goes with it. Scattered, reactive, quick to fear. But when the rhythm smooths into a long, wave-like pattern, the signal clears. The fog lifts. Your judgment comes back. You can hear a piece of bad news and not be swallowed by it. And this is the part one find almost funny in a tired sort of way. Because the clinics in that report are selling the chamber and the needle, and the one thing that actually moves your chemistry faster than any of it is the rhythm of the breath moving through you right now. Free, available in this exact second, in whatever chair you're sitting in. No one figured out how to put a price on it, so no one bothered to sell it. This is what the old word, the one people fold into vibration, was always clumsily reaching for. Not crystals, not wishing, something far more physical. The state you operate from isn't a mood that floats on top of you. It's a pattern your body runs, and the chemistry follows it. There's a kind of tiredness that doesn't come from working too hard. You felt it. It arrives in the late afternoon when the light goes amber against the kitchen wall and you realize you've spent the whole day taking things in and given almost nothing back to yourself. Your eyes ache, not from reading, but from receiving. That's the tiredness I mean. A complement, not a regimen. Light, the order in which it reaches your eyes across a day. I sat with that longer than I expected to, because we tried with a cup in your hand and your mind already 3 hours ahead. But that's the window the study is talking about. Get outside in the first light, not for a workout, not to accomplish anything, just to let the morning sun reach your eyes for a few minutes before the day claims you. It tells something deep and ancient in you what time it is. The whole internal clock, sleep, hunger, the rise and fall of your own energy takes its cue from that early light the way a tuning fork takes a note. You're not exercising, you're synchronizing. You're telling your body the day is real and you are in it. Then, and this is the part that sounds too simple to be worth saying, move. But slowly, not the punishing kind. A walk where you're not counting anything, where the rhythm of your own steps becomes the only metronome you obey. There's something the research keeps finding about unhurried movement that the gym never sells because you can't charge for it. The body that moves gently and often outlasts the body that's driven hard and rarely. And somewhere in the day, you'll have to steal it. A few minutes of deliberate quiet. Not meditation as a chore, just sitting where no screen can reach you, where the only thing entering your ears is whatever the room actually contains. The refrigerator's low note, a bird outside, your own breathing finally audible. You'll notice how loud the silence is at first, how your mind reaches for something to consume. Let reach and find nothing. That emptiness is not boredom. It's the day setting itself down. Now here's where it turns, and I want you to follow me carefully because this is the whole thing. That study didn't measure anything mystical. It measured light hitting the eye and the chemistry that followed, sleep, mood, the steady downstream effects of a body that knows what hour it is. That's the part one keep returning to. What you attend to, you tune toward, and not as a slogan. The morning sun does something to you whether you believe in it or not. The screen at midnight does something too. Both are real. Both leave a mark on the chemistry the researchers were counting. So when I tell you to mind the morning light, the unhurried walk, the deliberate quiet, I'm not handing you a wellness checklist. I'm telling you the world will keep playing its loud, anxious chord all day long. That's its nature. The reports, the dread, the endless comparison, those reach you at night, mostly in the worst possible light, and your body files them away. The question the study leaves you with is plainer than any philosophy. What reaches you first and what reaches you last? You've been receiving the world all day in whatever order it arrived. Tomorrow morning, the window is still there, facing east. That's the one thing in all of this you actually get to decide. There's a kind of tiredness that has nothing to do with how much you slept. You can wake after 8 full hours, coffee in hand, the light coming soft through the kitchen window, and still feel it. A heaviness behind the eyes, a flatness in the chest, like you've already been arguing with someone for an hour and the day hasn't started. You haven't lifted anything. You haven't run anywhere, but you're worn down before you begun. I want to show you where that exhaustion actually comes from, because naming it is the first thing that gives you any power over it. It comes from what you let in. Think about the last 24 hours. The phone by the bed, glowing before your feet touch the floor. The headlines about the markets, the borders, the thing that just broke overnight. The voices on the screen at dinner, raised and certain. None of it asked your permission. It walked in through your eyes and your ears, and it sat down inside you. And your body treated every one of those stories as if it were happening in a room. Here is something most people never learn. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between a threat you can touch and a threat you only watched. A war on another continent and a stranger at your door produce nearly the same chemistry in your blood. The body doesn't fact check. It reacts. It floods, it braces, it prepares to fight or to run. And then nothing happens because you're sitting on the couch. So the charge has nowhere to go. It pulls. It settles in the shoulders, the jaw, the gut. Day after day after day. That's the tiredness. It's not weakness. It's accumulation. Now here is the thing I most want you to carry out of this chapter. You already know that what you eat becomes you. You already know that sleep repairs you. That movement keeps your joints loose and your heart strong. You accept all of that as biology, plain and unromantic. But you've been told that what you consume with your mind, the news, the noise, the endless scroll, is somehow separate. Just information, just staying informed. Harmless. It is not harmless. It is just as biological as the food on your fork. The stories that pass through you change your hormones, your sleep, the way your heart paces itself through the night. A man who reads catastrophe for an hour before bed is not the same animal in the morning as the man who didn't. His blood is different. His recovery is different. And nobody warned him, because we never named consumption of feeling as a thing the body digests. So filtering what reaches you is not avoidance. It is not weakness. It is not putting your head in the sand. It is the same act as choosing not to drink something spoiled. You wouldn't pour rancid milk into your body and call it staying nourished. Yet we pour spoiled emotion into ourselves all day and call it staying aware. And notice, really notice, what's happening right now, in this moment, while you listen. I have been reporting hard things in this video. This week, a pharmaceutical company raised the price of a 60-year-old insulin from $40 to over $300. The same vial, the same factory, the same white box with the blue label sitting behind the pharmacy counter, suddenly out of reach for the people who needed to wake up tomorrow. Real, heavy, but listen to how your body feels right now, compared to how it felt scrolling the headlines this morning. Steadier, a little slower, the breath gone lower in the chest. That's not an accident. That's the difference between information thrown at you to provoke and information walked through with someone who has already survived it. Same facts, completely different cargo. One leaves a bruise. The other leaves you stronger than it found you. This is the part nobody says out loud, so I will. You're not learning about protection right now. You're being protected right now, in real time, by the way you're receiving this. The shield isn't something I'll hand you at the end like a prize. It's the listening itself, the choosing of one steady voice over 100 frantic ones. That choice, repeated, is the whole practice. The world will not get quieter. The headlines won't soften, but you can become the kind of filter that lets the truth through and leaves the poison at the door. And that is a skill, not a gift. It's built. It's built exactly like this. So stay with me. In the next breath, I'm going to show you the one question that strips a headline down to whether it deserves a place inside you. And you'll use it tonight. There's a version of this evening where you close this video, set the phone face down on the table, and the room is exactly as quiet as it was an hour ago. The lamp still throwing its yellow circle across the wall. The coffee gone cold in the cup. Nothing in the house has changed, but something in the way you're sitting in it has. You came here uneasy. You'd heard the number $21,000 and the new clinic selling it, the longevity treatments quietly sorted so that the extra years go to people who can write that check and not to people who can't. That's the news that's been sitting on American kitchen tables this month. And it's the kind of thing built to make you feel small, sorted, left behind. I told you the figure straight, and I told you who it leaves out. And here you are, still whole, maybe steadier than when you started. You can feel it if you check. The breath comes in lower now, finds more room. The jaw isn't doing that small clenching thing it does when the headlines stack up. You look straight at something designed to shrink you, and you didn't shrink. That's not an accident. That's the thing I want you to understand before we close the last chapter together. Most of what reaches you in a day is built to take something. The notification wants your attention. The headline wants your alarm. The clinic wants your $21,000 and the belief that you can't be well without it. You finish a morning of that and you're depleted, and you don't even know what was drained, only that the tank reads lower than it should. This was different. You took in real news, hard, current, and you came out the other side carrying more than you walked in with. Not less. That reversal is the whole point of this place. Hard facts don't have to cost you. Met squarely, they can build something instead. And here's the honest part. That state you found tonight, the lower breath, the loosened grip, the sense that the world can roar and you can stay seated. It's real, but it's not permanent on its own. It's worn now. But the world tomorrow will hand you another headline engineer to take, and the old reflex will be standing right there waiting to grab the alarm and swallow it whole. That reflex has had 40, 50 years of practice. Tonight is one evening against all of that. So I'm not going to dress this up. If what happened here mattered to you, if you felt the difference between being informed and being eroded, then the practical move, the unsentimental move, is to make sure you can find your way back. There's a button below that does exactly that. Subscribe, and the next time the world tries to consume you with its noise, you'll have a door back into this. I'm not asking you to do it for me. I genuinely don't need it the way the clinics need your subscription, the way the apps need your thumb. I'm asking because I've watched what happens to people who find a steadier way of receiving the world and then lose the thread of it. The grip comes back, the chest tightens again, and they don't know where the calm went because they never knew where it came from. You know now, it came from how you stood inside the story instead of letting the story stand on top of you. That's a skill, and skills fade without use. Coming back here is one of the simplest ways to keep it sharp. Think of it less as following a channel and more as protecting something you only just found, the steadiness that showed up in you tonight. It's quiet, easy to lose under the noise. But it's what you want when the next number drops, the next crisis breaks, the next voice tells you the good life has a price you can't pay. So if the door below is open, walk through it. Not as a fan, as someone making sure they can find this room again. Because we're not finished. There's one more thing I need to leave you with before you go. And it's the part that makes everything we've done tonight portable. Something you can carry out of this room and into tomorrow morning, when the lamp is off and the coffee's hot and the world starts asking, again, what it can take from you. Stay with me. The last piece is the one that holds. There's a particular weight to an empty chair at a table set for company. We began this video standing in a different place, outside a closed door, names stacked on a waiting list that stretched past 2 years, each one paying a deposit just to be told when it might be their turn. We talked about what that list does to a person, how it whispers that the good life is happening somewhere behind a velvet rope, and you're holding a number that may never be called. I want to return to that list now, not to mourn it, to see it clearly the way you see a room in daylight after you've only ever stood in it at dusk. Here is what I understand now that I didn't when we started. The most valuable spot was never on that list. It was never in that building. It was never something a clinic could hold open for you while you scrape together $21,000 in your nerve. The spot that actually mattered was the one you take quietly every morning, the decision about how you will inhabit the hours you've already been given. Nobody is keeping you off that list. There is no deposit. There is no waiting. And I'd ask you to notice something about your own body right now, this minute as you've listened. The tightness you carried in when this started, the low pull behind the sternum, the jaw you didn't know was set. Feel where it is now. Most of you are breathing differently than you were an hour ago. Slower, lower in the chest. That wasn't an accident, and it wasn't a trick. That was the whole point. This wasn't a video about a clinic. This was the thing itself. The shift you came looking for was happening in your nervous system while you thought you were just being informed. That's the part the brochures can't sell, because it can't be packaged. The law of vibration isn't a slogan on a poster. It's the plain fact that the state you hold determines what you can receive. Two people read the same headline. One absorbs it as a wound. The other registers it, weighs it, and lets it pass through without lodging in the body. Same news, different lives. The difference isn't intelligence or income. It's the frequency they were standing in when it arrived. You've been practicing that standing for the last hour, whether you named it or not. I think that's why you feel lighter than when you started. Not because the world got safer. It didn't. The waiting lists are still long. The prices are still obscene. The men selling immortality are still selling it. None of that changed. What changed is the place you're receiving it from. You walked in carrying it as a threat. You're walking out holding it as information. And that distance, that small, clean distance between you and the alarm, is the most life-extending thing in this entire field. No injection touches it. No deposit secures it. You generated it yourself, just now by the way you chose to listen. So let me leave you with the one idea I want to outlast everything else I've said tonight. Longevity is not bought. It's tuned. It's tuned the way an old instrument is tuned, patiently by ear, a little each day, until it holds the note on its own. The wealthy can buy the most expensive violin ever made and never learn to play it. And a man with a worn, ordinary one, who tunes it every morning and knows exactly how it sounds when it's right, will make music the other man never reaches. The clinic sells the instrument. The tuning was always yours to do, and it costs nothing but the willingness to do it. You don't need their list. You have something they can't put on it. I'll be here when the next headline lands. The next number, the next promise, the next thing designed to tighten your chest and shrink you down. And when it comes, you'll meet it differently. Not because you've armored up, because you've learned where to stand. That tuning fades if you let the world set the pitch again. It has to be touched lightly, often the way you touched it tonight. So come back, not for the news. The news will find you anywhere. Come back for the place we stand while we receive it. The chair was never empty. You were always the one meant to sit there. I'll see you at the next one.